So the next speaker this afternoon is a double speaker. So we have two representatives that are going to speak about the challenges of deploying ERTMS. And they are going to do it through the past experiences and what is coming next. This will be presented by Jaime Tamarit. I think most of you know him. He's a well-known authority in the subject. He's doctor from University Complutense de Madrid. He was professor in UPM, but he has dedicated especially the last 20 years to ERTMS, and I think we all acknowledge he has done a great job in harmonizing the user group, and as I usually say, being a diplomat, trying to get agreements between different operators, different manufacturers, and so on. So it is an honor for me to introduce you, Jaime. And you'll be sharing a conference, I understand, with Michael Ruesen, the current managing director of the users group, ERTMS. So you have Jaime, who was in that position for a long time, and now Michael, who is going to explain you the future challenges. He's also a long career in railways. He comes from other sectors, but once he touched railways, he couldn't get away from it. So he's working for Dutch Infra Manager ProRail, but he's delegating this position at the moment. So please, the floor is yours.
Okay, I would like to start thanking the university for hosting this shared key speech, shared with the two managing directors that were lasting longer in the users group. I am glad sharing this presentation with Michel, because Michel is the future and I am the past. I am the past, but I am very happy person because I left the users group in a very good hands, and I left the FedEx laboratory in the excellent hands of Jorge Iglesias. Then everything is well done for me. It's a good end of my career. Okay, I am going to present 12 years of work in 3 slides. The first slide is saying that at the beginning of the 19th decade, the European Union was, let us say, fed up with the paperwork regarding ERTMS, interoperability, and so on. And then they commissioned Mr. Egidio Leonardi to perform a feasibility, experimentally based demonstration of interoperability. And then he got the full political support to do it. And then he created 3 working groups. A group of the railways, defining all the functionalities, the functional requirement specification. There were 7 railways joined in the ERTMS users group. There were the group of the signaling companies, 9 companies joined in EuroSig in this time, that were defining the technical specifications covering the functional requirements of the railways. And then was a third group that I was leading, was the FedEx, Renfe, and later on, DLR joined us, was the testing. Then we have to demonstrate interoperability at this level. Then when we demonstrated in EMSET project, because we equip 40 kilometers of Madrid-Sevilla line with balises from all the suppliers, and we equip the auscultation trains with onboard units from all the suppliers, and was the first time that the companies were cross-testing. And then we learned two things. Before going to the line, we tested in the lab, and then we went to the track, and were no incidents in 1 year. And the line was in commercial operation. It was a big success, and we learned from this. And then at the end of this project, we did this. We delivered the first system requirement specifications to the Minister of Transport that was at this moment was Loyola del Palacio. It was a coincidence that I was happy with this. This was done in the foundation of the railways in Madrid. Then, after delivering the system requirement specification, we started the pilot experience. Here, I just wish to remember persons who left us during this working period. Was, for example, Florian Kohlmarsberger from DB R&D department, that was the director, was a brilliant person who died very young. And also from DB was Gerald Lucas, that efficient persons from the companies Yves Gruer, from the Compagnie des Signaux. And also, there are, I remember with a special affect, companies like Invensis, that they were surrounded by reluctant people, let me say, that were not absolutely convinced about ERTMS. And then like Invensis, Jesus Guzman, Victor Ayuso, Ricardo Ramos, all these kind of people that were really idealist, thinking that this was going to be the future. And it's funny that at the end, Invensis has been purchased by Siemens, and the director is just Jesus Guzman, which is the president of the company that was reluctant at the beginning. This is a good thing. I remember in this moment, things like the words of Antonio Colasso saying, 9 companies are not going to survive. They have to fasten, to fuse. And then I remember that Alstom was purchasing Sassiv, and then Ansaldo was purchasing La Compagnie des Signaux, Siemens is purchasing Invensis, and there are new movements coming on. What we did after the verification, the consolidation, experimental consolidation, the feasibility of interoperability on the Madrid-Sevilla line, this nice project, I was asked by the Commission to join the railways in Brussels and to become the managing director of the EUG Group from 2001 to 2007. And then we started saying, okay, we had 7 versions of the system requirement specification. Let us have a look on all the specification, and let us have the best possible specification on paper. And then we started a consolidation work that was technical consolidation, that was producing the test spec, reference tools, cross-testing in lab, and having multi-supplier projects. And then we performed an operational consolidation because we realized when we started to operate the Madrid-Lérida line, we verified that the companies were using different DMIs, saying the same thing with different symbols, or saying different things with the same symbols, and then it was really confusing. And then we, CEDES, driven by Jorge, made a comparative study, and we started the harmonization of the human factors. And then this was a really complex process because we have to start 3 times to get the, and now it's mandatory requirement, the DMI is harmonized. Then in this, the person driving this was Dominique Ligier, that was later on he finished his specification by the European Railways Agency and was working on validation, safety, human factors, DMI, and so on. After this consolidation, that's working in lab, and simulators, no, excuse me. Then it came all the deployment on the projects, 11 pilot projects. And then from the pilot projects, it came back a lot of remarks, error corrections, and so on. And then we created the subset 108. The subset 108 was a collection of error correction, improvements on the specification and clarification. This was the feedback from the first commercial projects. And this was the consolidated version SRS 230D. It's 230 plus the debugging from the pilot projects, which is contained in the subset 108. And now I was to finish saying what were the problems we encountered on this process. The first problem is that the first delivery by EuroSig on this moment was that they deliver a specification with hundreds of designer choice. They say, you can take or not, what you want. And then I had several doubts about the interoperability of this kind of specification. In addition, there were the error corrections. Then was, for me, not a very close, very well defined, precisely defined specification. I was a bit depressed with this presentation the first time. The second one I mentioned was the DMI harmonization. We have to harmonize the way of driving the trains because human interoperability is half of the interoperability. Technical interoperability is the system, and the other half is operational interoperability. And now, it's today on the baseline 3 that has been harmonized. Another problem was the handover between services from different suppliers. It was a real political problem, let me say, because in the border between the Netherlands and Belgium, it was impossible to get a handover between the RBCs from Siemens and Alstom. And then the solution was just to move to level 1 to cross the border and then to contact the other RBC on the other side. But in level 1, the speed is 150 kilometers per hour in the Netherlands. Then this raised the Commission at political level, was a big complaint. And this has been solved today. Now we are testing a CEDES handover in the projects in Madrid. We have handover between different suppliers on the Valladolid, León, Burgos. We have handover in the commuter lines of Madrid, for example, and now it's starting to be a fact. Other major problem was the Eurobalist reliability. The first time we used the level 1 on the Madrid-Lérida line, the balises were failing 1 per 1,000 readings. Then 2 or 3 trains were stopped every day. And then was a big crisis, and then to the point that the ministry was announcing that they were going to go back to LZB on this line. It was really an acute crisis that was solved thanks to participation of CEDES, that we detected the problem, and thanks to Jorge that put his hand on the fire and saved the situation at very high level. Again, Jorge, thank you. Then, the next one was the STM crisis. I am not, let me say, I am innocent. And then UNISIG was saying, we are going to specify STM for national systems. And then in Spain, we have the Madrid-Sevilla line with LZB. And then what I was expecting, an STM for LZB, because our network is not properly integrated, was a major problem. And I was putting a huge pressure on the companies to get the STM for LZB. But Siemens and Thales were not in favor of this. Now we have got one STM from Bombardier, and I think the solution at the end is not the STM, it's optional. And I had to say, it was my mistake to put a lot of pressure on the companies on this, because this was not the right way. I was not understanding the commercial issues. And just the last problem, which is the backwards compatibility. This problem is, we are at the end. On paper, it seems that it is assured. But in this moment, this problem is alive. Because we have all our infrastructure in baseline 2. And Renfe is having a huge contract of trains equipped with onboard units of baseline 3. Then it's a challenge. We have to verify before going to the line that the onboard units, according to baseline 3, are compatible with infrastructure baseline 2. I hope it's going to work well, but we have to verify experimentally. Jorge, is your next task. I'm leaving, unfortunately. And I give the space to the future. Michel, thank you, thank you. Bien.
Is it working now? That's better. Is this clear? Okay. Well, Jaime is the future. That is what I said. And I am actually already a little bit longer in the users group than Jaime was, at least in the position as managing director. So I'm not exactly a young guy. But nevertheless, I'm going to tell you something about the user group where we are now, what we are doing now, how we come from baseline 2, why we had to change, or why we think it's better to go to baseline 3, and what will be the future developments coming from Brussels, because this is where I come from. Greetings from Brussels. When Jaime was in the users group, actually it was a project organization. It was responsible for making sure that all over Europe, pilot projects actually resulted in the proof that ERTMS is an interoperable system. And when I came in, not as a managing director, but as a representative of ProRail, one of the members, actually the question was, shall we stop with the users group because the projects have been finalized or not? And at that time we decided, let's not stop, because even though we have proven the concept of ERTMS as an interoperable system, we think that there will be so many questions and things to be dealt with together collectively that it's better to stay alive. And that's where the users group actually turned in the second phase of its life, and we said actually we remain to be there to help not only the members of the users group but all the railways in applying ERTMS, and especially the ETCS part of ERTMS, so that we will create this interoperable railway. And basically, the users group at the moment is a platform where the railways come together to share their concerns and their problems about ERTMS, and to make sure that we come to consolidated views so that we know how we want to proceed together. The members of the users group are all the large railway companies in Western Europe who are implementing ERTMS. And it's about huge amounts of investments, typically larger than 200 to 300 million euros. Some of them are easily talking about billions of euros. You can see them over there. Most of them are infrastructure managers. Two of them are integrated companies, which is DB and SBB, but the reality is that most of the discussions which we have in the users group are discussions among infrastructure managers. But this is only half of the system. The other half is in the fleet. So therefore we have also decided that we wanted to create a platform for railway undertakings. We set that up in 2013, and we have invited all the fleet owners with a considerable fleet, and then you have to think about more than 50 million of investments. We have invited them to join, to come together in Brussels to discuss with us what are the problems, how can we make sure that we solve the issues together and not individually. Renfe, I could not completely hear what the colleague of Renfe was, the director of Renfe was saying, because he spoke in Spanish, but I understood that Renfe also has some problems. Renfe has been invited from the beginning to join us. We are still waiting for their participation, but they are most welcome in Brussels to join with DB, the Mitsui, the leasing companies, ÖBB, SBB, and so on and so forth over there. This is how we organized, apart from the infrastructure managers, also a platform where the fleet owners can talk collectively about how to proceed with ERTMS. The role of the users group is depicted over here. in Europe, if we want to create this so-called single European railway area, the European Union and the railways and the suppliers have to work together. On the political level, you can see that in blue. This is a discussion between the Commission, the representative organizations such as CER, EIM, ERFA, that's the rail freight operators, and EPTODA, the leasing companies. And from the manufacturers, it's Unife. On the technical level, where the technical discussions take place, that is typically a discussion between ERA, the users group, and UNISIC, when we talk about the ETCS part of ERTMS, and ERA, UIC, and the now called Railway Operation Communications Industry Group. In the past, it was GSMR Industry Group. If we talk about the telecoms part of ERTMS. And this all has to work together. This is basically what the users group is doing. Our activities actually can be seen in two parts. One is solving all the deployment issues which we still have. Jaime just mentioned one, the backwards compatibility of baseline 3 trains running on baseline 2 tracks. But there are many other things which come from every new project. There is always something where there's a question, where there's a complication. And in the past, the reason why we have had so many problems is that the projects, due to time pressure and so on and so forth, they came to project and product-specific solutions. And that was actually killing interoperability. And this is what we try to avoid now by talking together, by having the experts discussing the problems directly and agreeing on solutions immediately. And we do that by working on engineering guidelines, by giving clarifications, by defining mitigating measures if we cannot solve the problem immediately for everything. And finally, it will also result in changes of the TSI, but we have agreed that we will not change the TSI officially before 2022 or 2025 to create a stable environment for the projects. That is one part of the work of the users group. The other part is that the users group is also involved in the development, the definition of the new functionalities which are needed to create what we now call the digital railway. We talk about ATO, we talk about the application of level 3, we talk about satellite navigation, all those things. They are not at the moment yet fully thought through, and we are working collectively now to make sure that this in the end can be connected, attached to what we have as ERTMS at the moment. And this is also something which takes place in Shift to Rail, where the prototypes of these new developments actually are being developed. We also participate in Shift to Rail. I have 50 more slides. In 2008, this is the beginning, the first ERTMS lines came in commercial operation. You can see the Spanish lines, but there were also, of course, the lines in Italy, in the Netherlands, etc. These lines actually have meanwhile all been converted to this 230D specification level, and they have a very satisfactory performance. These specifications are also the official specifications since 2008, and they can still be used. And all the lines actually which you can now find in Europe are, and the lines which are, let me say, the projects have started after 2008, they are all based on this 230D specifications. We need baseline 3 for a couple of reasons. Even though baseline 2 is working very satisfactorily, it only covers the functionality for high-speed lines. And it doesn't cover things like level crossings and shunting in the best way. We all have kind of workarounds for those things. If you want to apply ERTMS in the conventional network, you need to have much more pressure on delivering the capacity. And for that, we need better performance for braking curves, and also the radio link needs to be optimized. And additional functionality was also needed, coming, for example, from Switzerland, where they said, we cannot use the existing level 1 to migrate. We need to have a very simple system so that we can do a better migration later on. And that is the concept of limited supervision, which I will not explain further over here. And Jaime also mentioned already that the DMIs of the different onboard units had to be had to be harmonized, and that is something which was done in baseline 3. The characteristics of baseline 3, it has everything of baseline 2. Nothing prevents you from building a baseline 2 line with baseline 3 specifications. It's even better because it has removed 300 errors and ambiguities in the 2.3.0D specifications. So 108, subset 108, Jaime said, had a lot of them, but there were some more. We also took care in baseline 3 about the backwards compatibility, but of course this is a theoretical thing and we are still checking whether that works in practice. And the added functionality in baseline 3 is what I already mentioned, the limited supervision, the functionality for the level crossings, train categories. We can make distinctions between different types of trains, which is helpful for the capacity. Brake performance, I already mentioned, packet switching, and online key management. We think the specification phase for baseline 3 started in 2008. The first release was in 2012, an official release which was included in the TSI. We made very quickly a maintenance release, and that's where we actually took it out again, 3.3.0, the version, and we put into place the 3.4.0, so 3.3.0 is not official anymore. But we had a second release last year, which we call the Release 2. And at the moment, officially, you can build lines and onboard units, but mainly lines, with 2.3.0D, 3.4.0, and 3.6.0. Where are we now? We are really working on the concept of hybrid level 3. Those of you who were in the session before with Jorge know something about it because it was explained by one of the speakers. We are dealing with automatic train operation, satellite navigation. I already mentioned that. GSMR is getting obsolete, so we have to think about how can we make sure that we have a replacement for that. We have to take care of improved IT security, and we have to improve the braking curves even further. The focus which we have actually is not in just creating new functions and so on and so forth. No, the focus is actually in making it much more cost effective to get a much better performance, reliability, availability, maintainability and safety against lower costs. That's it. Thank you.
So is there a question in the audience for our double speaker? So if you don't have any, I do have one that was made this morning by the president of Renfe, who I would say complained or asked, how can we in the future improve the stability of the versions and the compatibility between companies? I don't know if you are able to answer, Michael.
Well, at least I would like to give a reaction to that. I could not well understand it, but I have a kind of observation. That is, I am quite impressed about the results of what has happened in Spain if you talk about the high-speed lines. What I heard this morning is that this has had a tremendous effect on the economy in Spain. It is really something where it helps you as an economy, and that you started early with that, and you have the benefits for that. And you have, at the moment, that was also something which struck me. You have some industry over here, supplier industry, who has a lot of knowledge which is used in the rest of Europe, and that is actually a very good economic business case for you. Also, INECO, for example, is an organization. It was mentioned by the director of INECO that they were grateful for the opportunity which they had in Spain, but they use also all that knowledge to give consultancy service all over Europe, and that's one of the few companies in Europe who is actually doing that. So you have had a lot of positive effects from the fact that you were one of the first countries to go in high-speed operations and also to go in ERTMS. There is a price which you paid for that. That is that you were in the phase where ERTMS was still unstable and so on and so forth. So you paid also something for that. I respect it. But I would like to give you a warning, that is that don't then make the decision that you say we want to keep everything as it is now, to freeze what it is, and every line which we are building now, we will keep building it with 2.3.0D, because we will not have any problems. We have solved all the problems, because then you will lose your opportunity to be leading, and it will actually weaken your growing possibility. So I would really recommend the people who are involved in ERTMS in Spain to keep the emphasis on that everything should be backwards compatible. That is a very important role, which also is played by Spain at the moment, but also keep in the back of your mind that you have to make progress. And from the perspective of Europe, you're kind of an island. Sorry, but there are only 2 lines connecting Spain with the rest of Europe. You have to be very careful that you are not looking only for national solutions. Stay connected to the rest of Europe. Come to Europe, discuss with the people in Europe about how the system should evolve, and make sure that you're a front runner. You keep staying a front runner, because it will make you earning money. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So that was a brilliant presentation. Please give an applause to both of them.